All right, we're at the top of the hour, so maybe we just go ahead and kick off, and I will automatically assume that legions of people will join the room right after we start. But good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adam Prem. I'm the Global Public Sector Lead at ServiceNow for Defense and Intelligence. So we treat public sector just as an industry of industries. We have healthcare, higher education, the different retail, manufacturing, all those types of things. Defense and Intel has obviously become, due to the situation in the world, a very important industry for ServiceNow. I grew up in ServiceNow actually as a solution consultant, so the technical arm of the sales team supporting Navy and Marine Corps customers. So I did that for about 8 years. I just took over this role this past year, and it's really been interesting and unique that I get to kind of talk to military leaders and defense leaders globally to try to understand their concerns and their challenges and put together solutions to support them. I worked for Booz Allen Hamilton for 8 years prior to that in the PEO C4I offices in San Diego, so that's where I reside. But I wanted to start just by kind of talking about ServiceNow's defensive footprint. I use this as a way to articulate the idea that we are not new to this space, right? We're only about a 20-year-old company. We've really only had customers for 16 of those because the first 4 years was just building of the product and the platform. But we've been in defense industries, and we have a large defense customer base for a long time. A good 15 years. Very obviously well integrated into the US. We have tons of Navy customers based on the different Echelon 2 commands, Army as well, Air Force. Intel community is very strong with ServiceNow, but we're expanding quite a bit globally. We're seeing a lot of activity in Europe for obvious reasons. I make the joke that my first trip to Europe was in 2020, right after I graduated from college. I have not been back until 2025, and I've been there 6 times this year. There's just an explosion of activity based on the need for automation and AI in that space, obviously close to the fight there with Russia. 17 countries, over 200 customers. We like to reinvest into our defense customers, and we can do that in 3 different ways. Number one, we can stand up regulated clouds for them. So that's obviously table stakes in the defense world. You have to have a differentiated, more regulated cloud than our commercial one. We've got 2 in the US supporting federal business, and then also a national security cloud for only strictly defense. And we're standing up clouds in, we call it SPP, so ServiceNow Protected Platform, in the EU, in Australia, in Singapore, and I think we're building one in Saudi Arabia, and we're in talks with Canada as well. Kind of with the emergence of all the hyperscalers and sovereign clouds, obviously the need for self-hosting is a big differentiator for us too. There's a lot of other technologies that have sort of shut down their self-hosted or their on-prem capabilities. We see that as a strategic differentiator. Obviously, we want to deploy wherever it needs to be deployed. And so we're actually seeing a flip from a company attitude on this was kind of, yeah, we weren't really sure about the self-hosted business, but when the defense and intel groups came together and said, if you take away our self-hosting, you are destroying and decimating our business in that space. So now they've changed, they kind of flipped it and said, we need to reinvest in that kind of mentality. The second way that we can help our defense customers is actually listening to them and understanding what their challenges are to create new products that we don't already have. If you know ServiceNow, we have a lot of capability. There's a whole lot of things that we can do to help defensive organizations, but occasionally you come across things where it's like, we hadn't thought of that, so let's build it. And that's kind of part of my job, an important aspect of my job is turning around. I have a kind of a line into our product development team, so I can go and say, hey, the defense world needs things that we don't automatically provide, so we need to do that for them. It's not really covered in this brief, but think of things like ServiceNow in a tactical kit, think of like mission resiliency, those types of things. All right, but why are we here? To talk about the cyber landscape in the Indo-Pacific region. Big, scary numbers. Happy Halloween, everyone. But we'll start at the top. You're looking at over 2,000 cyber attacks per organization in the Indo-PACOM region. That's based on 2023 numbers. I'm scared to look at what 2024 numbers we'll look at, but it's coming. 38% of organizations consider themselves highly prepared. That's not a huge comforting number, right? But at least there's an acknowledgement that there's an opportunity to be had to do better. And then this is the one that scares me the most, this 51 billion web app attacks in 2024. And that's up almost double from 2023. And once again, I'm curious and a little bit scared to know what 2025 numbers are going to look like. But clearly, we all know this is not news. We know cyber threats have always been a big problem. It is the new sort of warfare space. And so again, I think we need to focus on it a little bit more. And so what's so different in the Indo-Pacific region that differentiates it from any other region. I think obviously the number of allied partners here, the fact that we all have different sovereign clouds, the fact that we all have different security regulations, and just obviously the proximity to China and the adversary there. So, but what we need to think about it, right, is the resilience aspect. I've heard it in the last two demonstrations here. You know, what happens when, if and when, we sort of know from a high-level perspective, it's been well hypothesized that if there is a first strike, it's probably not going to be kinetic in nature. It's going to be more electronic in the sense that taking out electrical grids and disrupting supply chains and, you know, wiping out the internet or access to the internet. So to disrupt and create chaos in the region. So one of the things that we're starting to think about from a ServiceNow perspective is how do we, if God forbid there is a disruption where they take out access to the cloud, how do we allow our customers to continue their operations locally, right? And so almost having a tertiary backup of what they're doing. So that's kind of some of the thoughts that are kind of ruminating, but it's clearly in this region, I would say Indo-Pacific and NATO right now are two of the biggest alliances that we sort of have to really start focusing on, just due to the complexity of a multinational allied alliance. So let me build this out. I hate these. So what is the actual problem today, right? There's a million cybersecurity tools. We're doing a lot of really excellent things, but it's a lot of technologies that don't automatically talk to each other, and they're being used by teams that don't automatically talk to each other. I mean, even if you look all the way on the left-hand side, this looks like a very plain and simple, clean area with this, the SecOps, where you've got vulnerability managers and security and IT remediation, but consider how many handoffs have to happen for information to flow from left to right there. And then we're not even looking at the first, second, and third lines of defense when it gets to, you know, all the way down to the right-hand side where we're talking about internal audits and measuring ourselves to say, like, you know, we know what we need to do, but we have to internally measure ourselves to make sure we're doing the right thing and we're doing it well. So it's just limited visibility when you have that many teams and that many tools and technologies. It's very difficult to understand, sort of improve your compliance to all that. So where does ServiceNow come in? You know, I said there's a million cybersecurity tools out there that are doing amazing and incredible things. And some of them are up here. And you know, and ServiceNow has our own products. I don't love to talk in terms of products, but I talk in terms of capability. But from a vulnerability scanners, SIM solutions, and alerts, your threat intelligence, we have those products too, and we're going to showcase some of them today. But obviously, you know, we go into customer situations all the time where they say, we've already got our tool set. So it's wildly important for a platform like ServiceNow to integrate seamlessly with all these technologies, and we do that. We were just, the presentation before me was Splunk, and we had a conversation afterwards, and they were like, oh, the Army came up to us, said, how do we work with you in ServiceNow? So I mean, it's there. But where ServiceNow really shines is kind of at the tail end of this, right? Because we do have our own security incident response. We have our own vulnerability response. We have threat intelligence too. But I would argue, and not in every case, but the tool sets on the left that you're seeing, they would all acknowledge that they're not necessarily built to be a system of action, like an AI-enabled system of action, a workflow agent that's going to help route work through the organization. They are amazing at producing alerts and getting way into the technology stack to produce the alerts, but then usually that results in an avalanche of tasks and alerts for someone to have to go through and prioritize and figure out what makes sense and what should I tackle first. That can be a nightmare, and that's where ServiceNow kind of really shines. And then I kind of talked about, I don't love, I'm going to build this one out too. I don't love talking product necessarily, but if I had to throw it all on a map, this is kind of what we're talking about today. It's really a collection of security incident response, integrated risk management, which used to be called governance, risk, and compliance on the ServiceNow platform, and then vulnerability response. And without kind of walking through it all, right, security incident response is your basic ticket, right? Once an alert is seen, in ServiceNow, we create a security incident, which is tracked. We report that into IRM, which is going to give us a risk identification. It's going to help cultivate sort of your CMDB and your threat heat map, if you will. We're doing things like we have a CAM offering, which is actually like basically our ATO our ATO workflow management system. So we're doing all of that in IRM, and then we're kicking out risk indicators into vulnerability response so that we can prioritize the vulnerabilities and we can do things with our AI system that will help workflow the mitigation and remediation efforts. And all that's to say is this is all built on ServiceNow's AI platform. If you know ServiceNow, it's the bits and pieces, these tiles above, are really supported by our underpinning platform that has a ton of capability with regards to the CMDB, which is critically important in this overall solution, but also workflow, integrations we sort of talked about, and certainly AI. I promise I'm not, I've heard feedback from vendors, from customers that we are bludgeoning them to death with AI. So I promise not to make that the focus of this particular presentation, but you are going to see little bits and pieces as we go through. Starting with vulnerability prioritization and hardening, right? This is that vulnerability management. This is kind of where we talk about, look, while we have this natively, we have this ability, but we also, again, understand that in the defense world, right, there's always an ecosystem of vulnerability management tools that are being used. ACAS, I think, is still being used. That's a tenable product. So we integrate that first, and we bring that information into our CMDB. We can then start to prioritize those vulnerabilities. We can harvest the key risk indicators from those vulnerabilities, associate it, and we can start using change automation, which is another part of our platform that we can either manage the change internally within ServiceNow, but a lot of times we get asked to integrate with like a big fix or an SCCM to help deploy those changes. And then we can do things like risk mitigation and sort of close the loop there. But again, things that we can do natively, but we also, we love using our partner community for this as well. There we go. This is just one, so in lieu of doing you can't do much in a 20-minute space, or a demo wouldn't really make sense, you wouldn't get the whole thing. I've got a couple screenshots in here. But this would just be kind of this idea that the vulnerability dashboard or a manager workspace, so I can kind of see from some of my big host vulnerabilities, you can creating watch topics. So what's important to me is maybe a set of the infrastructure that I manage, so I can do things like that. But across that top, those tabs, right? Impacted CIs, distinct vulnerabilities, and your items there as well. So we've got a lot of underpinning information here. This is just a quick and dirty dashboard. So we get into the threat response, or the threat intelligence. Build this out. Not going to walk through this entirely, but look, I mean, I think we'll talk about MITRE ATT&CK framework, which we absolutely have something canned within ServiceNow that can articulate that story. But we're doing things where this is where AI can start helping, right? This is where we can save a lot of time and energy from someone that's working in a SOC that has spent most of their time doing things like figuring out who to assign this vulnerability to. Or if there's 30 vulnerabilities and they all look and seem similar, why not just correlate them into one, so I'm managing one incident instead, or one vulnerability instead of 20. So AI can do that for us. We're also doing things like predicting similar remediation tasks, and we can do that based on, hey, we've seen this vulnerability before, and this is how we solved it. I'm going to just generate a playbook for you, and I'll ask you if this is okay for me to run through, and our agentic AI will just go out and do. So it's pretty powerful stuff. And this is obviously going to improve not just the response time for vulnerability response, but it's also improving the accuracy, right? They will know how to do it and document it better than we would, than a human would. I say that too because in ServiceNow, and I think probably most technologies, everyone's getting into the AI space. What's critically important for us as a workflow application is that our AI it won't do anything, it won't act on anything unless it connects with a human first, unless you tell it to. So you're going to see some screens here in a little bit that's just kind of like, hey, look, this is my priority list that I would do if I were you. Am I okay to execute? And you say, yeah. So I just think that's a good AI governance thing that we need to be cognizant of. This is the MITRE ATT&CK framework or heat map. So what we do is we take in MITRE and other sources of threat intelligence, any kind of IOC that we can get, and we're going to overlay that on your infrastructure, what we know you have in your infrastructure within your CMDB. And with that, we can start sort of documenting some of the shortcomings and where we need to spend our time. And from a remediation standpoint. This kind of gets into the security incident response. This is the one that most people are kind of are used to when we're talking about ServiceNow, is just kind of that that tail part of the ticketing aspect of how we're fixing things. So you can see on the left-hand side, we can work, again, with a SIEM if you have one, like Splunk. We see that all the time. We connect with generally all the major ones. And of course, you can use ServiceNow to do things like we provide security incident catalogs, forms. We can do ingest over email. Hey, I think I saw there's a security concern. We take that in, we parse it out, we kick an incident off of it. And so we can use our products or others. And then this is where the richness happens, in my opinion, is this number 2, right? This is where we understand the security incident. We can map it to a CI or a group of CIs or even a service at the highest level. And that's kind of where we do things like we can automatically assign urgency to it, priority, assignment groups. We can do all that quickly once we have a handle on the CMDB. This is then you pull in the MITRE attacks framework type of work. We will do like a response action playbook. That's what I was mentioning before, where AI can kind of sit there and go, I'm just going to tell you exactly what to do. Don't go off and doing your own thing. Like, this is the way to go. And then we act certainly as a SOAR we can automate the response, the remediation of it. And then we do the post-incident reports and dashboards and KPIs and things like that. So this would be an example of just a high-level dashboard for security incident response. You've got your big dashboards up top. These tiles below represent actual records, so security incident record. If I were to click into one, this is where I want to pause for a second, because this is just your generic record on ServiceNow from a security incident response. You're going to see the title, description, these tabs across the top. If you're looking at it, you can take a look at the investigation that was done, related records. Are there other sort of associated records in ServiceNow doing things with this security incident? TISC context and things like that. But on the right-hand side, this is where you get Now Assist, and this is our AI, agentic AI, kind of sitting there going, hey, this is the proposed resolution plan for this SIR, right? I want to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it even asks, do you approve that I go off and do these things? And again, human in the loop is very necessary, but it's still saving a ton of time and effort. And like I said, it's improving accuracy. This would be kind of at the highest level, right? This is, we'll call it Carla here, is her cybersecurity executive dashboard. So this is where she's seeing not just the security incidents, vulnerability, the threat management, all the pieces together. And again, Now Assist on the right-hand side is going to say, look, how can I help you? What things are important to you that I can drum up? I can build a report. I can refresh some of our data feeds from MITRE or elsewhere. But what do we want to do? So that's what it's kind of doing. It's proactively reaching out to the user to say, I'm here if you need me. I can summarize things. I can go reach out to data sources. What do you need me to do? So all that to say, I'm looking at this. This is the power of ServiceNow, right? We talked about 2 of the little tiles out of everything that you're seeing here. We talked about security operations. We talked about integrated risk management. But the power of ServiceNow is really the things that I didn't necessarily talk about too. IT operations management. This is where we go and discover your infrastructure. We'll discover your cloud infrastructure. We have event management tools and capabilities there. So we can do that. Asset management. This is where we store, if vulnerabilities happen on a certain asset, we have like technology lifecycle dates, meaning we will store in your CMDB with a customer's permission, technology dates as far as this is when your device goes end of support, end of extended support, end of life. And this allows us to get ahead of things from a COTS obsolescence perspective. Security operations. Strategic portfolio management is kind of my background. That's the program management aspect of ServiceNow. You think of like, some of these bigger critical security incidents or vulnerabilities that actually need or necessitate an actual project where we give it budget. We've got resources and skills and people and timelines. That's where that kind of brings that in. And then privacy management, I won't go too much into. All of that is in the platform, right? So you've got CMDB, you've got your AI and intelligence. So again, it's larger than just the cyber piece, right? And this is my last slide, and this is kind of something that's very near and dear to me. It's going to be a focus for me in my current role in 2026 is, and I just heard it in the last presentation as well, is how are we communicating between, even just within the US agencies, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, right, intel community, but how are we actually talking to our allied partners? I'm not the first person to suggest this. It's not a technology problem. I think we all know that. We can share information between ServiceNow instances all day. We do it. We can share information with other vendors' technologies. We do that all day as well. I think we obviously run into a policy problem, a trust problem. Which is very understandable, right? It's kind of like, I don't want to share my data with someone that's going to exploit it, right? But I think there's an opportunity here to find communities of interest, to maybe do a pilot around sharing information. So, Australia is a big customer of ours. Canada is a big customer of ours from a defense perspective. We're trying to get the Five Eyes together to say, look, we can harmonize a little bit, share information where it makes sense. And we do have to worry about the data classification, of course. We have to worry about CDSs, of course. We'll follow the rules, but I just think there's a good opportunity. And this is something that's, I think, really important in two regions. Indo-PACOM for sure, and the NATO, the Nordic region is also very interested in this as well. So look, just wrapping up. Number one, key takeaways here. Risk is great, security operations is great. We have to sort of unify them, bring them together. I think we waste a lot of time transitioning between areas of the organization, handing off things. Harness AI, look, I told you this wasn't gonna be a pure AI pitch today. I was avoiding that at all costs, but let's not ignore the idea that it can be a massive time saver when used correctly with the right governance. It's gonna solve a lot of problems, so I don't want to smack you on the head over that one. And then this last one is just, hey, we can do this from a ServiceNow perspective. We talk to our partnering technologies all the time about how can we collaborate to create a better community and a better situational awareness posture for our allied nations, specifically in the Indo-PACOM region. So we're looking at that as an opportunity to make it better. So with that, I don't know if I went over or not, but that was my last slide. I went 2 minutes over. I can stick around for questions. There's three ServiceNow people in the room as well. They can help answer questions if you have any. But I will just meet you in the center of the room for questions because I want to make sure the next presenter has time to set up. Hopefully this was helpful. Thank you guys so much for being here. ServiceNow rules. All right.
Great question. Good job.
Yes, I do.
Oh my goodness. That was
one of my favorite things.
Yes.
We did a 2-day workshop with high school and college.
Yeah.
I mentioned that to Max today. He was wondering why we didn't do it.
I would do it again.
Yeah.
We just have so much energy and fun.
Yeah.
We should do it with the building. Because we have this. So we have a new building where you can build custom apps just through a conversational interface. And it's so in minutes you can build whatever you want. It's already done.
Well, you know what? Let me know the next time I make this. You don't have to. What you mean? You guys are gonna be out here and you got some time.
I mean, we come out every quarter now. I'm sure we'll be out probably January, February time frame, but we just start planning for it.
Yes. Definitely. Yes.
So Steve's daughter built a Korean trading card.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right, that's right, that's right.
I remember there's another team I was working on, they were building a learning management system to compete with whatever they were using at their high school. And they wanted to